Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Bayat Ghadeer channel and our Sunday night continuation of our shows which deal with the topic of the Deobandis, a topic that of course was thrusted upon us by the dynamic duo and their attendances at Hyde Park. We've now reached our 12th episode. And you know, the way that we always do things, we begin with dealing with one of their absurd points that they've raised at Hyde Park or in one of their videos, and then we refute it. Truth be told, it is getting a bit frustrating because we have been looking at a number of their deceptions and dishonesties which they have concocted at Hyde Park when they did a one-day shoot. We will be addressing them. Before I do, most apologies. I went straight into it. If I just introduce the panel, please, our usual panel. 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡𝗦𝗖𝗢𝗙, Assalamu alaikum, brother.
𝗦𝗨𝗣𝗣𝗢𝗥𝗧. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. And obviously Sayyid Ali. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. So essentially, like I was saying, apologies to Sayyid Ali as well. I was saying that normally our objective is to try to address their nonsense that's spewed. One of the problems is we're starting to get frustrating now where we are responding and we're not really getting a response back. We're not getting them to either clarify the position or if we are wrong, to correct us. If we've misquoted the text that we've refuted, correct us. Total silence. We've got two extremes. We've got this extreme of total silence, or we've got some, our dear friend Haji, recruit of the Sunni Defense Channel, who we don't know is a Deobandi one day or Salafi the next, we're not sure, but his refutations are just quite amusing. He thinks just by reading out Shia books that's good enough, and then when we do respond, he doesn't seem to be able to sort of grasp what the response is. And just carries on. So it's almost like it's getting frustrated to say, look, you're not actually looking at the response we've given. But not a problem. We have noticed Haji thinks quite cleverly that he's refuted us with his most recent video, in which he's also issued a challenge for us to clarify a point. Don't worry, Haji Sahib, we'll deal with that next week, inshallah. For the time being, we will deal with the Deobandi dynamic duos, particular issue that they raised at Hyde Park. But before I do say that, did you want to add anything else about our friend Haji Sahib, or should we go straight into the Deobandi duo?
No, I wouldn't waste my time. I think the brother doesn't understand his own argument. I think recently he did a response where he mentioned some Shia hadith which talks about the shade or the throne of Allah having a shade. I think we made it pretty clear on the first episode that we were not dealing with the Ashari interpretation to the throne of Allah or the shade of Allah. Rather, we were dealing with the Atharis, those people who take these texts to be literal. Nobody denies the fact that we have such reports that exist in our hadith books, but we do not offer such interpretations. Neither have the Ahlul Bayt, the progeny of the Holy Prophet, who we believe are the inheritors of the Prophet's knowledge. They do not have this opinion. Neither do the companions of the Ahlul Bayt have this viewpoint. In fact, the companions of the Ahlul Bayt were corrected on numerous occasions by the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt regarding this particular issue. So the thing is, as you mentioned earlier, we don't know what this brother is. One second he's behaving like a Salafi, the next thing he's promoting Deobandis. He admits that he's a Hanafi himself, and I believe in a video, and he also studied in Darul Uloom, which is obviously a Deobandi institution. If I recall, there's even a video clip of him where he even denies that Allah having any physical attributes as such. So, you know, these type of people, they don't actually offer any type of understanding of what their beliefs are. Do you understand? Of these particular narrations. So instead, what they do is they say, oh, look, you Shias, you have these traditions in your books. Yes, okay, we do have these traditions in our books, and we are well aware of these traditions in our books. But again, we do not offer these interpretations. We're not literalist people. We do not put limitations on Allah. We don't believe Allah sits on a throne that creaks. We don't believe Allah descends every night and reveals his shin to the people. We don't believe Allah's foot is in hellfire. No, my friend. Yes, according to some of your school of thought, some of your school of thought do believe this. And this is why the Ash'aris and the Atharis have always disputed about the Sifat of Allah and attributes of Allah. But again, as you said, we don't want to go into too much detail. We can deal with this at another time. But yes, as Brother Haji needs to go back and needs to refer back to the video to see which type of audience we were speaking to and why we were bringing up these traditions, and try not to misrepresent our point of view. If you're going to say, okay, well, Shias have these narrations, no problem, that's fine. But again, go back to our theologians, see what our theologians have said, see what our commentators have said regarding these sifat. So yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Sayyid Hassan. Sayyid Hassan, you there?
I think one thing that amuses me is he's actually insisted that we produce the text of the theologians on those narrations. Mate, you've got all the books in your hand anyway. Why are you telling us to do that? You've already got those books, so you're already going to know the answer. I mean, one of the weakest things, I remember when I was at law college a long time ago, you don't ask a question of your opponent you don't know the answer to. He would already know what the answer is. Why is he challenging us? Does he really think that we don't know what's in those books? But inshallah ta'ala, we will address that in another show. Now let's quickly move on. Let's deal with the objection of the dynamic duo from Hyde Park. Say that he kindly produced the narration which they had an issue with. Well,
sure.
What they're trying to produce as evidence, please.
No problem. So what I'm going to do as usual, I'm going to screen share for our viewers. And if you just bear with me a minute, I'll bring the clip up for you guys to have a look at. The question is not clear, but what I will do is I will rephrase the question that this particular individual asked the Deobandi Sheikh. Just give me a minute. You should be able to see my screen, inshallah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you the video clip, and I'll let you viewers hear it for yourself.
Yes, brother. I've got a question to ask Mawlana. Basically, I just want to ask you, follow the Quran and Sunnah, or do you follow the...
So the questioner asks the question, do you follow the Quran or Sunnah, or do you follow the Ahlul Bayt? Okay, so here is a response. He has a book already, by the way. As we've seen in our previous episodes, it's all premeditated, it's all planned. This Sheikh deserves an Oscar, as I said before, where he's just getting random people of the public. So he gives them the question, and then he has he conveniently has the book in his hand where he will read the answer. So the question is, do you follow Quran or Sunnah, or do you follow Quran or Ahlul Bayt?
Only Quran and Sunnah and Ahlul Bayt. Quran and Sunnah or Quran and Ahlul Bayt. First and foremost, I want to resort to our books. We'll stick to the Quran itself again and again and again in the Holy Quran. You know, Ati Allah wa Ati Rasul, Ati Allah wa Rasul, Ati Allah wa Rasulahu, again and again and again. Ati Allah wa Ati Rasul. You know, time and again in the Holy Quran, obey Allah and obey the Messenger. Now, with regards to following Allah and following His Messenger, Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or you follow the Holy Quran and Ahlul Bayt, I've given Quranic references, many places in the Holy Quran. Now let's turn to the books of Shia themselves. You've got Al-Takfir here, the most authentic book of the Shias, and it contains the narrations of the infallible Imam, some narrations of Rasulullah according to them. And present two references within this. Reference number 1, volume 1, page 40. The Shi'i infallible Imam, he says, كل شيء في كتاب الله وسنة نبيه صلى الله عليه وسلم. Everything is found in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of his messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 4 pages down the line, on page 44, same volume 1, it says كل شيء مردود إلى الكتاب والسنة. Everything will be returned. Any matter of disagreement will be returned and brought back to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In other words, where there is a disagreement, will bring you back to Quran and Sunnah. Now here the Imams in two narrations of this book. They're not saying follow Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, or follow Quran and Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, or follow Quran and wait for the third Imam. They're saying follow Quran and Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is exactly what the Ahlul Sunnah say. So this has been corroborated by Shia sources themselves.
So as you can hear, Sayyid Hassan, I'll pass it on back to you, inshallah. Sayyid Hassan, are you with us?
Sorry about that. Yes, I'm there. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Thank you. So we've just listened to the narration. He's basically saying that there's you following the Quran and the Sunnah is the correct position to adhere to.
We can't hear you. You're not coming through.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Apologies. Some phone problem. Yeah. So that's the narration which was presented.
Lady? Can you hear Sayyid Hassan? Because I can't, sure.
Sayyid, I can hear him. He's really clear.
Yeah. I think I'm coming in clearly.
Okay,
can you hear me?
My microphone, the AP is playing up. Let me just sort out. You guys, Sayyid Hassan, if you carry on, inshallah, I'll sort my microphone out.
So I think that the important thing is that I think that there's a silly kind of it's a silly point to say that we are individuals which reject the notion of adhering to the Quran and the Sunnah. Obviously, the Sunnah is there, the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family. We've got obviously that's a major source of guidance for us. And no Shia would say we don't adhere to the Sunnah. It's not a form of adherence for us. Of course it is. But the question is, when you look at the concept of the Sunnah, you have to look at through whom does one acquire those teachings. And for that, we have a much more clear narration which essentially sets out the means via which we understand the Sunnah, and through a certain chain. And that's where position of the Shia 12 is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has essentially through Rasulullah told the followers of the Prophet, peace be upon him, through Nabi Pak sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to adhere to two sources, the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. If you want to understand the Sunnah, it is through them as the inheritors of his knowledge. Sayyid Zadi, can you please expand on that, please, that point?
Yes, Sayyid. The thing that we want to emphasize here is that we don't have a problem, obviously, with Kitab and Sunnah, because so many hadiths in our own literature says that if you come across a hadith that you are doubtful if it's authentic or not, refer it to Quran and Sunnah, right? So, alhamdulillah, there is no question over it. But the question that comes in and that requires an answer is that when hadith 𝗧𝗨𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗓 came in, what are the sigha, what are the correct wordings, what are the two weighty things that Prophet of Allah has prescribed the Ummah to look over? One is Quran and the other one is Ahlul Bayt. So we both have consensus that Quran is a common term. But the second one, is it Sunnah or is it Ahlul Bayt? So in our understanding, in our own research, we have come across that Ahlul Bayt, the hadith that mentions Ahlul Bayt are correct and are authentic, and the hadith that mentions Sunnati are inauthentic as per their own standard. So this is one thing, because obviously you see, like in a lot of their Jum'ah khutubat, and I mean like in khutub and in their sermons, right, they're always quoting this hadith that we have to behold Kitab and Sunnati, because Prophet of Allah has mentioned in his sermon of farewell, Hajjatul Wada', he says, تركتم إن تمسكتم به لن تضلوا بعدي كتاب الله والسنة. يعني هذا مفهوم منهم. So this is what they are saying and preaching, and they are emphasizing on this point that we have to hold these two things. So the understanding is pretty clear, and their understanding is right, obviously, because the hadith says to hold them, not only to love them. But is holding them, what are the two things that we have to hold them? Is it Quran or Ahlul Bayt, or is it Quran or Sunnah? So they are always emphasizing it's Quran and Sunnah. We are emphasizing that the hadith of 𝗧𝗨𝗕𝗦𝗧𝗓 has Quran and Itrat Ahlul Bayt. And the Sunnah that we will get will be from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. through their understanding. If there's a difference between the people, between the Sahaba, and between the companions, and between the generations after them, then who are the people that will tell us the correct Sunnah? They will be Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because Prophet have said, "Taraktum in tamassaktum bihima lan tadillu ba'di kitabullahi wa itrati." Like, I'm just paraphrasing the wordings of the hadith. Obviously, there are different versions of it. So yeah, this is my understanding of it. So yeah, go ahead.
I just want to finish on a quick point before we bring up the traditions about Quran and Sunnah and Quran Ahlul Bayt. Obviously, it's a massive topic, and to do this quick response is not going to really do any justice to it. But if you notice, this individual was trying to exclude the Ahlul Bayt from the Sunnah. Are the Ahlul Bayt alayhi Islam not included in the Sunnah of the Prophet? And what he did is he again misrepresented these traditions. These traditions were talking about a general principle, and that is all knowledge is contained within Quran and Sunnah. And we agree with that to some extent. But if all knowledge was contained into Quran and Sunnah, and every individual can deduce that for themselves, then there wouldn't be no need for, following a madahib or following a school of thought. And again, what guarantee is there that even if you adhere to following your idea of Quran and Sunnah, that is guarantees salvation? Because you can't even agree on the same concept of God. On one hand, you have one school of thought claiming that God is, he has hands, feet, etc. Then you have another school of thought denying that outright, and it's something which you disputed throughout the centuries. So without further ado, anyway, I'm going to screen share. Sayyid Zaidi, inshallah, you can first deal with this particular narration about Quran and Sunnah, and then we can have a look at what the ulama have said about it.
Yes, Sayyid. Inshallah. So can you put on the screen?
Sure, give me a second.
So now we will be quoting different scholars. Or not even, to be honest, like me and Sayyid Ali and Sayyid Hassan were discussing it before we started our program. There were a lot of scans that we had, but honestly, that's a show that we have to do in future. Not to reply him, but just on this hadith, Kitab and Itrati and Kitab wa Sunnati, we need to do a different show with a lot of scans, with a lot of turuq, and a lot of good research in it. And we just don't have enough time to put on all those things right now. So we will be quoting only one scan for now that discusses the inauthenticity of this hadith specifically. So the book that I have is from is this book from Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah has a book called 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗓𝗓 𝗦𝗨𝗡𝗧𝗓 عن رب العالمين. It's a book that he has written. It's a huge book. It's published by Dar ibn Jawzi, and it's volume number 4, page number 83. So Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah writes, وقال صالح بن موسى عن عبد العزيز بن رفيع عن أبي صالح عن أبي هريرة قال رسول الله إني خلفت فيكم شيئين لن تضلوا بعدهما كتاب الله وسنتي ولن يفترق حتى يرد علي الحوض. So this is the hadith that he quotes, and the wordings that I will be using would be from the researcher, from Abu Ubaidah, who is the researcher of this book. He writes in the footnote, he says, رواه ابن عدي في الكامل والدار القطني في سننه والحاكم والعقيدي في الضعفاء الكبير والخطيب في الفقيه والبهقي في سننه واللالكائي في شرح أصول اعتقاد أهل السنة والجماعة وأبو بكر الشافعي في الغيلانيات كلهم من طرق عن صالح ابن موسى به، وهذا إسناد ضعيف جدا. صالح ابن موسى الطلحي هذا قال ابن معين ليس بالشيء ولا يكتب حديثه، وقال البخاري منكر الحديث، وقال النسائي متروك، وقال أبو حاتم منكر الحديث جدا عن الثقات، وقال ابن عدي عامة ما يرويه لا يتابع عليه أحد. So Sayyid, can you go through the translation, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'll read that very quickly. And the narration, which is on the authority of Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, said, I leave upon you 2 weighty things. You will not be misguided after them. The Quran and my Sunnah, and they will not separate till they reach Lake Found. So as the Sayyid mentioned, Sayyid Zaidi in the footnote, it mentions that this narrator, Saleh ibn Musa, Ibn Ma'in said he's nothing and his hadith should not be written. And Bukhari said his hadith are munkar, not accepted. Imam Nasai said his hadith is not to be taken. Abu Hatim said this hadith is strongly rejected, even if he narrated it from trustworthy people. And Ibn Uday said the vast majority of his hadith has no extension from other scholars. So as you can see that this hadith itself is not being accepted by numerous heads of Sunni scholarship. They don't accept this tradition. So this tradition itself is weak, this hadith about Quran and Sunnah. Even though in theory, this obviously we have no issue in terms of following the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet and his teachings, right? However, let's go into what the Prophet did instruct his Ummah to do. Do you want to read the first one, Sayyid Zaidi?
Sayyid, can you go through? Yeah, let me read it for our viewers, inshallah. So, تهذيب اللغة, this is the book. Yeah, give me 1 second, let me go through it. Yeah, تهذيب اللغة is book by Azhari, and in volume number 2, page number 264, he says وروى شريك عن ركين عن القاسم بن حسان عن زيد بن ثابت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إني تارك فيكم الثقلين كتاب الله وعترتي فإنهما لن يتفرقا حتى يرد علي الحوض. قال محمد بن إسحاق هذا حديث حسن صحيح ورفعه نحو زيد بن أرقم وأبو سعيد الخدري وفي بعضها إني تارك فيكم الثقلين كتاب الله وعترة أهل بيتي فجعل العترة أهل البيت. Go ahead.
And the hadith is, I'm not going to read the whole chain. Zayd ibn Thabit said, the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, said, one day surely I left behind among you 2 weighty things, the book of Allah and my progeny. They both will not depart from each other until they return to me at the pond of 𝗙𝗢𝗧𝗜𝗢, the pond of Lake Found. And the footnote, in the footnote it's written that Muhammad ibn Ishaq said this hadith is reliable and say authentic, and it's also attributed to Zayd ibn Arqam, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, in which the statement said, surely I left 2 weighty things, the book of Allah and my progeny, which are my Ahl al-Bayt. And this narration is deemed authentic and has reached us through numerous Sahaba of the Holy Prophet, and peace and blessings be upon him. Another tradition, and this is from Tabarani, again Zayd ibn Arqam, the same hadith, I leave you 2 weighty things, the book of Allah and my family, and whom they are my household, and they shall never separate until they come to me at Lake Found. And in the footnote it mentions that this hadith is authentic according to the criteria of Bukhari and Muslim. Again, the same tradition, repeated again, and this is from Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir, volume 5, page 169, 170, hadith number 4980 and 4981. I will just leave it there for the viewers to have a look at for a minute. Again, the same tradition, repeated, attested by the scholars. And the last but not least, and by the way, there's so many traditions which are deemed authentic, reliable by their own scholars about this hadith about following Quran Ahl al-Bayt, and this tradition about the Quran and Sunnah being weak. And this is from Zayd ibn Thabit. The Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, said, I'm leaving you 2 things to follow, the book of Allah, Zawjal, which is the road which extends to the between the skies and the earth, and my progeny, and they will not separate until they return to me at the pond of 𝗙𝗢𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗢 in paradise. And in the footnote, Ahmad Shakir said this hadith is Hasan and it's reliable, and this is from Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal, volume 16, page number 28, hadith number 1470, I believe. Is that correct? Let me just have a quick look. Yes, and there's the tradition for the viewers to see. So as you can see, the Quran hadith, following the Quran and Sunnah, is actually deemed weak by the scholars. It is not accepted. The chains, the way it's reached us, there's severe criticism on those individuals who transmit these reports. Whereas the hadith about Quran Ahl al-Bayt alayhi salam is something deemed authentic. And it's quite ironic that, you know, I know you want to exclude Ahlul Bayt from the Sunnah, that's no problem, because we know that when it comes to the tafsir of the Holy Quran, or even your fiqh, your jurisprudence, you take very little from the Ahlul Bayt, and your own scholars have admitted it themselves. And in the future, inshallah, we can dedicate a whole show on this issue. And I think that's about it. Sayyid Hassan, do you want to come on?
Thank you for that. Sayyid Zadi, can you just clarify one point? All of the narrations make reference to Quran wa itrati wa alabati. So quickly, Sayyid Zadi, itrati, what does it mean?
Sayyid, itrati means from progeny. It literally means progeny. Itrati.
Yeah.
So it specifically refers not all, like obviously, itrati Ahl Bayt is really specific, and it refers to progeny generally, right? But there are a lot of details, honestly, that let's say when we say Ala Marwan, does it include Marwan or not? So scholars have said it includes Marwan too, but that's a really separate discussion. But obviously, it doesn't include wives. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah,
itrati, exactly. Thank you. Okay, I think really let's just move on to the next topic, essentially, which is today's program. So, what we'll be talking about, we have in previous shows connected to this been talking about the fitna of Takfir, and how essentially, despite the attempts of the dynamic duo to present a united front against Shias, that they're all apostates, and all the Sunni sects that hail from the Indian subcontinent agree with this. Not only is that false, but they have historically called each other apostates. Today, because one of the topics that the dynamic duo are very emotional on, and I assume the inspiration comes from their scholars such as 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗓𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗓𝗙 and 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗓𝗦𝗧𝗏 Farooqi, that sort of school of thought, this Takfiri Deobandi mentality, since this camp are particularly vociferous on the issue of disrespecting their companions, essentially is an epic fail, and it means that you have de facto become an apostate. We will, inshallah ta'ala, use that principle to show how the Deobandis themselves have become apostate if we adhere to that principle. So that is essentially my opening, and I would say that over to you, Sayyid Ali.
Okay, if everyone can mute the microphone, and what I'll do is I'll get Sayyid Zadi to present the first part of the segment.
So, Sayyid, can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Fine.
Yes, Sayyid. Sayyid, the thing is that we will be discussing the criterion first. Once we have established the criteria of what constitutes a disrespect to a companion, then we will be discussing their own books that says the same thing. So before we move forward, we will be presenting you few references for this. So this is not an isolated opinion of a scholar or 2 or 3 scholars. This is something which is said by different Deobandi scholars across the board. And the scholars that we are quoting, inshallah, won't be some majhul or some really unknown scholars. These are scholars that represent the Deoband school of thought. So the first reference that I have is from Muhammad Abu Bakr Ghazipuri. He's a really, really well-known scholar, and he is known for his work that he has done against Salafis. And he has even written a refutation to Talib al-Rahman. Talib al-Rahman wrote a huge book in Arabic, not a huge book, but something which is still big. It's called Deobandiyya. Deobandiyya is a book that was written by Talib al-Rahman, and so Abu Bakr Ghazipuri kind of refuted that thing, refuted his book in some way, and he has written a book which is called 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗓𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗓𝗙 غير مقلدين كنقطة نظر. It's published by 𝗬𝗎ة عُلَمَاءِ هِنْد. 𝗬𝗎ة عُلَمَاءِ هِنْد is a really huge organization again that represents Deoband school of thought, and it is published in Delhi, India. So page number is 19, 20, and 21. So he gives few headings, and I'll go through those headings. First heading is 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡 hujjat nahi. So he is quoting the blasphemous beliefs of Salafis that they have regarding Sahabas. So the heading he gave is 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡 hujjat nahi. So anyone who believes that the call or the saying of a companion is not binding or is not hujjah has committed disrespect to that companion or to the companions as a whole. So this is the first heading he writes, and he says غیر مقلدین کے مذہب و عقیدے میں صحابی کا قول دین و شریعت میں حجت نہیں. فتاوی نظریہ میں ہے، یعنی دوسری بات یہ ہے کہ اگر حضرت عبداللہ ابن عباس اور حضرت عبداللہ ابن زبیر کے فتویٰ صحیح بھی ہے تب بھی اس سے دلیل پکڑنا درست نہیں، اس لیے کہ صحابی کا قول دلیل نہیں. And then he quotes other scholars too. Second heading he gives is صحابی کا فعل بھی حجت نہیں ہے. So he quotes another blasphemous belief of, as per him, of Salafis regarding companions, and the belief that they have is that the action of a companion doesn't constitute as a hujjah, is not binding upon the people to act upon. So he quotes Nawab Siddiq Hassan Bhopali, Nawab Siddiq Hassan Kanwaji, and he quotes from his book 𝗦𝗨𝗣𝗣𝗢𝗕𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗓𝗏, which is not our topic for now. Third thing that he quotes is Sahabi ki rai hujjat nahi. The opinion of a Sahabi or a companion is not hujjah, is not binding. And the fourth thing that he says is Sahaba karam ka fahm bhi hujjat nahi. Fahm means their understanding or their understanding of the deen or their understanding of hadith is not even hujjah. So he quotes four things what exactly constitute as disrespect to a companion. And those four things, as Sayyid Ali would have shown it before, those are the four beliefs. Saying of a Sahabi is not hujjah, action of a Sahabi, opinion of a Sahabi, understanding of a Sahabi is not hujjah. So this is the first reference. Second reference is from another book that's written against Salafis. Now, Sadat. So the things that I'm quoting right now, it's helping us in two ways. One is it's establishing a criteria what exactly a disrespect is. The second thing that establishes is also, like, remember the last time we showed what Salafis have said against Deobandis. Now this time we are quoting what Deobandis have said against Salafis, right? And since our Shaykhain or the people that we are addressing to, they believe we are kafir, why we disrespect Sahaba? So with the same token, I think they have to call Salafis as kafir too, because now the quotations that we are giving, their scholars are trying to prove that Salafis disrespect companions, right? So the second reference that I have is from Abu Bilal al-Jangwi. He's a famous, the reason I say is that anyone who has gone through their munadrat and their books would know that he is a famous scholar too, Abu Bilal al-Jangwi. I think his name is Muhammad Ismail. He's from Chunk, and this book is published by 𝗙𝗢𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗢𝗙 in Gujranwala, Pakistan. So he says, Said, just read it in English if you don't mind. Can you read it in English, please?
Sure.
Sayyid Ali?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah, just read it in English, please.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Maulana Abu Bilal Jangvi Deobandi, Chunagari Ghair Muqallid, says in another place, "O my brothers, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Umar Farooq, Usman, Hazrat Ali were the Ulil Amr, those in authority, at the reign of the respective Khilafat, the rule. However, none of the companions followed them and attributed themselves towards the Khalifas. Moreover, the companions went against the sayings of these Khalifas. If the sayings went against what happened, against what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet said." Okay? So now in commentary, this Deobandi Maulana writes in the statement, because this was, remember, what I just read was a statement of a Salafi scholar, and in response to that, he says, the author of this book, "Oh my dear Ghair Muqallid, or Ghair Muqallids, meaning Al-Hadith, yeah, Salafis, friends. What is this Ghair Muqallid, Rafizi?" Remember the term Rafizi, this is a term which they use for the Shias. Obviously they use it to belittle the Shias, but the Shias, we generally take it to be quite a praiseworthy and lofty position because the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt gave this title to us as well. So he says, what is this Ghair Muqallid Rafsi writing? Did you see who is following the footsteps of the Shias? Who is trying to please the Rawafid by writing that when the companions found rightly guided Khalifas against Allah and His Messenger, they did not follow them? So did you understand that? Did that make sense, guys? I hope it did. So he's criticizing this Al-Hadith scholar for making that statement about the Khulafa, because obviously they consider these people to be Khulafa Rashideen, right? The four rightly guided Khalifas. But this Salafi scholar is saying that, look, however, none of those companions followed them and attribute themselves towards these Khalifas. And more importantly, they never used to follow them on all matters. Yeah, especially if their sayings went against Allah and what the Prophet said. And because of that statement, this Deobandi Maulana Abu Bilal Jangvi, he compared him, this Salafi scholar, Al-Hadith scholar, as being a Rafzi. Oh, sorry, that was a bit too fast. I'll bring the page up so the viewers can always go back and have a look at those passages which have been presented. So, Sayyid Zadi, do you want to come to the next book, inshallah?
No, Sayyid, yeah, you go ahead with the translation. We'll just go through the translation, honestly, and we will only quote the Urdu text when it's really necessary, right?
Okay.
So for now, you and Sayyid Hassan will be going through the translation. I'll just step in if we need any clarification or if we need to speak in Urdu.
Okay, so this is another Maulana from the Salafi community, Maulana Ilyas. Apologies. Deobandi Maulana Ilyas. He wrote a whole book dedicated to Salafis, and what he does is he quotes basically passages of this Salafi scholar, which he feels that it contradicts the classical Sunni scholarship or the orthodox position. So what he does is he has a chapter heading called "The Companions Are Not Binding, then their views are not hujjah upon the people." And he says the companions are those exalted personalities that sacrificed everything for the pleasure of Allah and the Prophet. And then he says غير مقلد, meaning those who do not adhere to following a particular school of thought, because some al-hadith or some Salafis, they don't consider taqleed or emulating one of the four schools of thought as being valid position. So that's why they call him غير مقلد. He says this غير مقلد didn't even spare these pure personalities, meaning that this Salafi, he didn't, he didn't even stop. It didn't stop him from criticizing the Sahaba of the Holy Prophet, the companions of the Prophet. And by the way, we need to make our position clear. We, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, we have the same position as the Holy Quran and Hadith about the Sahaba. We don't say all the Sahaba on the same level. You have different groups of Sahaba, different types of Sahaba, and we've discussed this in our previous shows about the companions of the Prophet, which inshallah will continue at some point. So what he does is he quotes some passages which he feels as if this al-Hadith scholar, disrespected the Prophet. So some of those statements included the sayings of the companions are not binding, so he considers that to be blasphemy of some kind. Number two, proof can't be established using exegesis of companions, especially if there's difference of opinion among them. So what he says here is that when it comes to commentaries of the Holy Quran, if there's differences amongst them or the dispute, then those cannot be brought forth as evidences when it comes to the commentary of the Holy Quran. Again, the sayings of a companion is not binding, so the viewpoint of a companion is not evidence for the masses to follow. And last but not least, the ijtihad. Obviously, ijtihad is the methodology that's used to deduce a ruling from Quran and Hadith. So what they say is that when a companion does ijtihad, when he gives his fatwa, regarding a particular issue, it's not binding upon anyone. And this is from his book, 𝗙𝗢𝗪𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗢𝗙 की तहकीकी जिज़ा, I believe, page number 132.
Yes, फ़िरक़ा अहले हदीस पाक व हिंद का तहकीकी जायज़ा.
Jaiza, okay, that's fine.
𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡𝗦 is called 𝗦𝗨𝗣𝗎𝗧𝗓𝗢 of Deobandis. Even if you go on YouTube and type 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡𝗦 or type Ahnaf Media Services, right? He's a really well-known scholar up there, and he's called 𝗦𝗨𝗣𝗎𝗧𝗓𝗢. 𝗦𝗨𝗣𝗎𝗧𝗓, someone who speaks on behalf of Islam, and he's considered as the debater of Islam. Someone as an authority.
Do we know which Salafi or Al Hadith scholar he criticized here? Does he mention his name, or was it just general?
Said, I think go down, go to the next page. 1 second, say it. He says Nawab Siddiq Hasan Bhopali, Nawab Siddiq Hasan Kannauji.
Okay.
The Nawab Siddiq Hasan Kannauji is a really famous scholar.
Yeah, he is.
And so many books. Yeah, go ahead.
So now we will come to the next passage, and this is from Maulana Abdul Ghani Tariq, okay? Who actually, you know what? I'll let Sayyid Zaidi do this one. This is an interesting one.
Maulana Abdul Ghani Tariq Sahab, he has written a book. The name of the book is called Shadi Ki Pehli 10 Raatein. You know, the first 10 nights of marriage. So there is the bride is غير مقلدا or Salafi, and the groom is Hanafi. So the boy and the girl are having a conversation, and see, those are the first 10 nights, but see what kind of romance that they're having, right?
True romance.
Yeah, true romance. So
was this before he rubbed the ant oil on, or was this after?
I think that's it depends. It's a really good topic, but I think he probably would have gone through the story of Nabhani, put on some ant oil, right, and then probably would be talking to his girl. Anyway, so what happened was that they are having conversation, and that conversation, the boy is Hanafi and the girl is Salafi. The girl says something to which the boy replied that, are you implying or do you say that in our madhab, like in Hanafi madhab, we believe that the companions of the Prophet, their call or their saying, their actions are not binding? So he got really angry, and the person who's writing the story, he says that the hand of the groom or the hand of the boy, it went up so he can beat his wife, right? But he had to desist, he had to stop himself. And then he says that if you ever say this thing again, which means that if someone says this thing, that the call or the saying of a companion is not hujjah, right? If someone says that the ijtihad, their understanding, their opinion is not hujjah, as we have quoted before, then I will take your tongue out and feed it to dogs. So this is the romance going, like she just said one thing, and he got so angry that whosoever says that the companion, the action of a companion or saying of a companion or hujjah, will take their tongue out and will feed it to the dogs.
That's a real icebreaker, that conversation, isn't it? You normally try to charm the bride of the first night, but obviously it's gone straight to domestic violence. Not very impressed.
It kind of, well, I know it's not entirely linked.
That's why they have domestic violence, right? And that's why in Deobandi Madarsas, right, you have so many stories, right? Recently, they had few stories about the physical and the emotional abuse that the students are facing in the madrasa. Imagine if they have books written like this, and if they are praising that person, saying such a nasty thing, then you can expect them to do what they do in madrasa, right? This is really expected from them to do, because if they would praise this action, right, they are praising this in books, right? So how much they will do practically if they see anyone that goes against their opinion, right? And you will see our viewers and listeners, you will come across like around 10 scholar or 10 quotations from their book. I think quotation is to be more precise, from their books, that say that the understanding or the saying of a companion is not hujjah, You'll come across it, inshallah. So if we apply the same standard, right, we have to take each and every tongue out and feed it to dogs. Like, what kind of language is this? Like, does scholar use this language? Like, is it really real? If I would say one of the listener to any Deobandi, if you say anything against Shias, we'll take your tongue out and we'll feed it to dogs. This is how you have a discussion with anyone? And these are the first 10 nights between husband and wife. You know, husband and wife need to be, you know, they need
getting to know one another, and instead they're getting to sort of kill one another.
I think I need to take my opinion back. He wouldn't have applied the ant-oil. Otherwise, he wouldn't be talking like this.
Yeah, exactly. This is a early discussion.
Yeah.
But such an intense discussion on the first night of a marriage. Amazing. We're impressed. Okay. Next reference.
Sure. So now we're going to go into applying some of those principles which they consider to be blasphemy, okay, on the statements of their own scholars. Okay. So on one hand, they're condemning other people for having this position. And by the way, it's interesting because I remember a couple of years ago there was a Salafi sheikh, I believe his name is Sheikh 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗓𝗦𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗍𝗍. He's an American sheikh, and he made a very interesting speech. And in his speech, he was talking about, you know, being a blind taqleed or adhering to the viewpoint of one of the imams. And, you know, he even criticized the Sahaba quite intensely in this lecture. And he said, look, you know, the Sahaba made mistakes, you know, who said that the ijtihad was always right. And then there was a particular individual, another Deobandi sheikh, somebody I've debated in the past, and he criticized them heavily. He was like, oh, look, obviously you're going to criticize these people because you know that blindly following them will take you towards Rasulullah and it will take you towards the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him. But the point is, you know, they consider this to be such disrespect. You know, anybody who says anything about the Sahaba or, you know, attacks any of these principles which they kind of innovated themselves and introduced, because there's no basis to these things. Otherwise, you know, other scholars, especially within the Al-Hadith community, you know, they would never brought them up to begin with. So these are the 4 or 5 things anyway which they consider to be blasphemy of a companion. And that is, number 1, the saying of a companion of the Holy Prophet is not binding, number 1. Number 2, the action of a companion is not binding. Number 3, the opinion of a companion is not binding, or his fatwa. And number 4, understanding of a companion is not binding. And this was something which we quoted right at the start of the show, which Sayyid Zadi read about, you know, those things which they consider to be blasphemous when it comes to the companions of the Prophet. So now let's have a look at some of the statements of their own scholars. So number 1 is the first scholar we'll come to is Mufti Taqi Usmani, and he says the correct answer for it is that is person action. And by the way, remember person action. So number 2 here, as you can see. So the correct answer is that for the person action and the opinion of Ibn Umar. There's no mention of it in the prophetic sayings. Moreover, the ijtihad of a companion is not binding either. So as you can see, Mufti Taqi Usmani has automatically said here, so what they consider to be blasphemy, because you know, a Salafi scholar said it, but hey, hold on a second, your own scholar says it. Moreover, the ijtihad of a companion is not binding, hujjah either. So this is from the book Ghadir Trimzi, volume 1, page number 191. And there's a scan for the viewers to go and have a look at. Again, another scholar. And again, what I'm going to do is the reason why I had these 4 here is just to remind us what they consider to be blasphemy, you know, and we're gonna compare it with their statements to see which of the 4, you know, groups they automatically fall under. Mufti Taqi Usmani again, he says, now we are left with the report of Hazrat Abu Bakr. Firstly, there's severe contradiction within it. Secondly, even if we deem it to be authentic, then it is still an ijtihad of a companion that is not binding if it contradicts the prophetic sayings. So you can see here again, it automatically falls into at least two of these groups I can see, right? And this is from 𝗙𝗢𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗢𝗙, volume 1, page number 283. And that was two statements by Mufti Taqi Usmani from the same book, who's quite clearly blasphemy against the Holy Prophet. At this point, I should call him a Rafzi. I don't know if the Deobandi brothers want to cut his tongue off and feed it to dogs, but the point is that according to their own principles, he has made a serious blunder. 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡𝗦 𝗦𝗨𝗣𝗣𝗢, one of the founding fathers of the Deobandi movement, in his famous book 𝗡𝗢𝗓𝗦𝗢𝗦, page number 275, he says, in a view of Sharia, other than the infallible prophets, any exalted personality, be it very lofty, is not infallible and can make mistake. Even our analysis and experience proves it that no one is prone from shortcomings and errors, be it in actions of knowledge. Even companions can err and the ijtihad can be wrong. Which is interesting because on one hand, Tanvi is saying this about the companions of the Prophet, yet they say about their own scholars that everything that comes out of their mouth is the truth. So they have this one position for the Sahaba. Oh, it's fine, you know, the Sahaba, they're not infallible, they don't make mistakes. But on the other hand, the way they present their own scholarship is that they will never ever accept any faults or mistakes by their revered figures. But of course, whatever they say comes out their mouth is the truth. But whatever comes out of a Sahabi's mouth is an error, and their ijtihad can be wrong. And again, it falls under one of these conditions, of what they consider to be blasphemy against a companion of the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him. That's from his famous book, 𝗡𝗢𝗓𝗦𝗢𝗦. Oh, that was a bit too fast. So I'm going to go back, and again, there's a scan for the viewers to go back to have a look at. Now we'll come to the next scholar, Mawlana 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗎, and this is from his book Khazain al-Sunnah, volume 1, page number 182. He says, Mawlana Shahanpuri, sorry, my pronunciation is not so great because I can't get the word on my tongue. He said, Mawlana writes in his book, Badal Juhud, that this was an isolated action of a companion. So he's talking about a companion again. The Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him and his family, never acted on it. Neither he had knowledge, nor he commanded the action of that companion. Okay, so again, you could see that when it comes to the action of the Holy Prophet, according to Mawlana 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡𝗧𝗜𝗢𝗎, it was not binding, and neither did the Prophet any time instruct his people to follow his action. And there's a cover, and there's the page. Oh, sorry, again, apologies, sorry, it's laptop's too quick for me, I'm just getting used to it. So yeah, there's the page for your viewers to go back and have a look at. Now we'll come to the last few quotations, and again, we can be applying the same principles, what they consider to be blasphemy. And this is from Allama Amin, and he says, Hazrat Abdullah ibn Zubair isolated opinions that were against the opinions of companions were never accepted by Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. For example, Ibn Zubair held the opinion of giving azan and iqamah before the Eid prayers. He used to pray with his hand, with open hands. Okay, and again, you can see there's different things that would be considered to be blasphemy, which would make him a Rafzi, an insulter of the companions, worthy of having his tongue cut. Let's come to the last few quotes now, and that was on page 299, which I mentioned earlier. And the viewers can always go back to have a look at that. Okay, so let's come to, oh, I think we've already done that one. Okay, here's another one. Allama Zafar Tanvi. A proof can't be established by the sayings or an action of a companion if it contradicts the prophetic sayings. Again, there's issues here. and as you can see, it falls under two various groups of what they consider to be blasphemy. They would be considered kafir according to their own principles. It's from Sunnah, volume 8, page number 97. I believe I may have skipped a previous passage of similar statement by somebody who we mentioned.
Yeah, it's similar text.
Yeah. So that's why I'm not going to go back to read that one. Sorry, just give me a sec. And this is from
𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡𝗧𝗧𝗔𝗖𝗧.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. And he says, and it's in the madhab of the companions, and it is the madhab of a companion that is not binding on any person. So he goes, the school of thought of any companion is not binding. Yet on the other hand, let's remember the conditions. Number one, the saying of a companion is not binding, is hujjah. And what does he say here? The madhab of a companion that is not binding on any person. An action of a sahabi is not binding. So obviously, naturally, a companion, his understanding would be based also on his action. So again, he falls in even into the second group. The opinion of a sahabi is not binding. And naturally, if a sahaba was going to be following his interpretation and understanding of the sunnah, then he would fall into group 3 and obviously group 4. So yeah, this guy would definitely be considered to be a Rajsi, worthy of having his tongue cut and thrown to dogs. And we just got, I believe, a couple more left. That's on page number 39. And now we've come to the famous Hanafi scholar 𝗦𝗨𝗣𝗎𝗕𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗓𝗓, and in his book 𝗦𝗨𝗣𝗣𝗢𝗡, volume 2, page number 507, he says a similar thing to the previous scholar, and that is, and it's not the madhab of a companion that is not binding on any person. That's on page 507. The viewers can always go back and confirm that for himself. And the last but not least, Maulana Mahmud al-Hasan Deobandi, and he says, as for the act of a companion, then it's not binding hujjah. This is from his book 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗕, page number 30. And I know it's a bit tiny in there, but if you are watching the show on the mobile, you can always put your screen on the side view and zoom in and have a look at yourself. So yes, as you can see, we've quite clearly demonstrated in this show that according to their own principles, that they've set what they consider to be blasphemy against the companions of the Holy Prophet. If we were to apply the same conditions or the same criteria and what they did takfir on al-hadith scholars, for example, they would automatically become kafir themselves. Sayyid Hassan?
Thank you very much, both Sayyids, this evening, enlightening as always. So as you can see, the danger of takfir has once again fallen back and sort of hit them hard. If you are going to use this principle that criticism of the Sahaba essentially puts you into the Rafzi category and essentially places you in the takfir category with it, then unfortunately the Deobandis themselves have fallen within this trap and have become Rafzis and infidels on account of the sayings of their grand ulama. I think that concludes things for this evening. Sayyid Zadi, do you need to say anything else on your part?
Yes, I had one thing that I want to add here is
Yeah.
that, see, like, this show was a mixture of two things. One was the fear, whatever standards that they have for Rift, for Tashayyur, and for Takfir, their own scholars have committed the same thing, right? The second thing that I want to emphasize here is that, it's matter of, gaining more audience, and it's matter of gaining more fame. That's their viewpoint is. Their viewpoint is not to safeguard companions, to be honest. Because if their viewpoint is to safeguard companions, why wouldn't they have same stern commentaries and quotations for their own scholars that have written the same thing? Right? So we have proven them we have proven them someone that disrespect companions from their own standards, right? Now I would like any Deobandi to come in to come in and say, okay, all those 10 quotations that you have mentioned, these quotations and these all scholars are Rafidis. If they have the himmat, if they have the, if they have the courage to do so, then I think we'll be glad. It will be easier for them, for people to judge that they are pure people, right? But if they can't do it, then these are double standards and hypocrisy. So that's from me.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think you've muted the mic, Sayyid Hassan.
Yeah, so then is there anything else you want to say?
I apologize to the viewers. We did start slightly earlier than expected. We've got other things going on at the moment in terms of other projects we're currently working on. And inshallah, again, join us next week. Inshallah, and then we'll be continuing on with this whole series. We just want to make it clear, our intention is not to upset any Deobandi brothers and sisters out there. We had no choice but to come forward and present these shows because of the propaganda that was made against us. And we are actually coming towards the end of dealing with most of these objections. So, and then inshallah we'll be working on other things. So yeah, once again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It's very important, and hit the bell button so whenever there is a live show, you'll receive automatic notification.
Thank you very much, Sayyids, for tonight's show. Keep us all in your du'as, viewers, brothers and sisters, as we shall keep you in our du'as. Assalamu alaikum.